I don't want to bury the lead, so you have COVID-19, is that correct?
That's what they tell me. That's what the test came back.
Yeah. So I just,
Negative for the flu, positive for COVID-19.
from what I've read, you have been traveling recently. And so where had you been traveling before you came home and started to feel a little ill?
I had been to Taiwan. Well, I've been to LA, Hawaii, Taiwan, Paris, New York, and then back to Austin.
And how long
Um,
after you got back did you start to feel symptoms?
10 days after I got back to the States, um, and then maybe like 4 days after I got back to Austin. I mean, so given like the average incubation period, I probably got it's probably either New York or Paris. I hope you don't mind me coughing on this thing. It will be hard to go a whole podcast without coughing.
This is a
Um,
time where I probably won't edit out the coughs because the coughs underscore the fact of what you're going through right now.
yeah. Um, Luckily, I'm on day 10, so it's not as bad as it was a week ago. So it's hard to say. I mean, God, the beginning of the month feels like so long ago, right? So, I went away in February, early February, and then, it wasn't even in the States. Well, no, they had one case, but for the most part, it wasn't in the States. And then when I went to Taiwan, they were so strict about controls, temperature checks, hand sanitization, the whole works. I doubt I really got it there. There were very few local cases at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is I probably got it in Paris, but none of my friends have tested positive for it or shown any symptoms, and it's been over 3 weeks. So everybody I know I've been in contact with has tested negative. So my guess is I probably picked up from a stranger.
In Paris, you think, or like in an airport or someplace?
It's hard to say. You know,
Yeah.
I, Ta- I got really good in the habit in Taiwan of always washing my hands, always wiping everything down. I had a meetup and people tried to shake my hands, and I'd be like, "Sorry, no handshaking, elbow bump only."
Yeah.
Um, Wiping everything down. But I mean, we touch our face so many times a day unconsciously that I'd find myself slipping up, like, oh, I just touched my face, and so I, given that I don't know anybody else that has it, and the friends of mine that have got tested have all been negative, nobody has shown symptoms. It was probably from a stranger.
Were
But
you washing your hands rigorously in Paris as well?
all the time.
Okay.
I had lots of Purell because I always stock up. Even before coronavirus, my mom instilled in me always bulk buy. Plus, I'm lazy, so I'd rather go to the store once every like 4 months and once every like 4 weeks. Again, I mean, they say that from what they know, it can be up to 2 weeks, but average onset is 5 to 6 days. So that would have put me in New York at that time.
What was the arc between getting stateside, getting sick, and then wondering if it was COVID, and then trying to figure out if it was COVID?
I started to develop a small cough on Friday after I had gone out for a few nights. But on day 2, that turned into a fever, and then I had a progressively worse cough, and then a continued fever and a worse cough. So I found testing. It actually just opened. I got tested on a Sunday, and it had just opened on Friday. And they let me, it was private testing, but they let me get tested, I think probably in part because of my recent travels to Taiwan and France.
Hmm.
Though I don't think Taiwan is the issue. The timing doesn't even make sense anyway. And I tested positive. So I'm just in quarantine.
And how do you feel? Has it progressed in a worse way? Has it stabilized? Has it come and go? What is the actual experience of being sick with this virus feel like?
um, I have been really lucky that I've only had a mild case. The fever broke on what would be one, two, three, four, day 5. I peaked at 101, 101 and a half, and then it was, by day 5, I was like 99, and I haven't had a fever since. Um, but the cough is the worst part. It's really feels like, when you just have like a really bad chest cough, you can feel like that sort of phlegmy, like deep, chest, where everything just, you can just feel it all in your lungs and such. That's what it's like. So right now it just feels like a really bad cold. I had a lot of aches and chills the first couple of days too, and then about day 8 and 9, I also really felt exhausted. By 6 o'clock, I needed to go to bed. But now I don't feel that bad.
And have you been tempted to check yourself into a hospital, or have you felt pretty stable? They say the advice is that you should really avoid ER type situations unless you feel like you're having difficulty breathing. Have you come to that point, or have you been comfortable in home quarantine?
I have not had come to that point. I mean, the problem with being in quarantine is you end up Googling everything.
Yeah.
And, there's not a lot of information out there. Basically, like, if you get a cold or a flu, how the days are going to progress, right? They have enough case studies to show like day 1 will look like this, 2, 3, 4, etc. With coronavirus, they don't sort of have that up yet. They're still kind of creating what's it going to look like as you go through this process. And so you end up, reading about people who were fine, and then suddenly day 8, they're being intubated, and you're like, is that going to be me? Oh my God. So it creates a lot of anxiety. And then you think, is this anxiety, or was it shortness of breath? Do I need to go to the hospital? But it was mostly anxiety.
How have you been spending your time?
I have been reading a lot. I have finally caught up on lots of Netflix shows. And I've been writing. I have a lot of stuff just, to do after a month of traveling that I now have time to do. I've been spending way too much time on Twitter. But, when you're locked inside, you have a lot of time on your hands. A lot of time.
You're known as Nomadic Matt with your very popular blog, and also more recently with TravelCon. What's the status of TravelCon right now? Which it was scheduled for May in New Orleans.
Yeah, it was scheduled for May through 10th. It's now been pushed to September 18th to 20th. Like every other event in the April-May time frame, we've just had to push it to the fall. Most speakers have said they'll be able to return. I think everyone's just trying to scramble and make their plans and refigure out their life. It's a tough time in the travel industry. Everyone is basically just ground to a halt, and nobody knows how long it's going to last. And even when we are allowed to travel again, it will take months, years to recover.
It just feels like a historical era, and even talking to you now, this will eventually become this historical moment in amber where we're speculating on things that will eventually happen one way or another, but there's no way we can know what will happen. But keeping in mind that people are really freaked out about this, about the health situation itself, and about how it will affect travel, you're in a unique situation as a big travel personality who actually also has the virus. What might you tell people? Keeping in mind that there's nothing as certain, what might you tell people about what's going on and how to feel about it right now?
Yeah, these are very uncertain times. I mean, I wrote a newsletter on March 4th where I told people, we should listen to the experts and you should avoid places, that are hotspots. But, they weren't recommending wholesale travel restrictions. And, if you're planning a trip to Hawaii or Brazil, go. But, skip Italy, skip China and all those other hotspot places. But no reason to not go to like the Caribbean. And then just days later, I was like, I take that back. In the WHO has changed their tune, and it just feels like we went from we should all be cautious to we should all be inside. And I think that's really deeply unsettling to know that the world can change so quickly.